Okay, what's going on? What's going on? Good evening. Today is Monday, August 11th, 2025. And what we're going to be looking at today is the setup that we took on NQ that I dropped in the group chats at the New York Open. And then kind of see the aftermath of the second half of the day of what conspired after we took profit. Um, and from a higher time frame perspective, kind of get an understanding of what we're looking for. All right, going into the new day. So we got about 15 minutes before the new open. So let's see what we can get. Just really quickly, um, using this document, for me personally, what I wanted to see when we're looking at NQ, specifically here, let's just look for intraday. From a higher time frame perspective, right, weekly, daily, we were in an area that I thought we were very overbought, right? 4 hour, I thought we were in an area that, from buys from the previous week, right, we had bought up. This was last week's low. And so it made higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, came into the supply. And I felt like most buyers that we've seen today took profit because we weren't getting the structural break of the 4 hour above the 23,000 848s, right? And so it made sense for what I was trying to see in my overall outlook of the day, right? My expectations was to see buyers taking profit. Now, understand the reason why, that's uh, an expectation was the same thing from the previous week, right? Price sold off that whole week, previous to last week's, right? It sold off, and we anticipated that buys would step in as shorts were covering, right? Institutional order flow is going to be coming in and buying up these orders at the same time that individuals who shorted breakout trades and just anywhere that they shorted and that massive fall Thursday and Friday from 2 weeks ago, we wanted to see that buy up. We ended up getting that. So same thing here this week, right? Either we are going to make our way back down into the range, right, into this massive piece of demand, into these 23,550s, or or even lower, right? 20,400s and lower, and start to eat back on this price, or we're going to maybe reaccumulate, like I said, in the 20,550s, somewhere in here, or maybe inside this expansion on H1. But my expectations were to see before New York Open, before the highs were taken, a run on the 15.5 liquidity of overnight players, right? So just a run of the 20,780s. Okay. And so it looked like this on 15, but I was just kind of showing that higher time frame. So on a 15, before New York ever happened, it looked like this, right? So you would have had 1045, so even 930. This was like I said, this is what it looked like, right? And so we haven't had that run on the highs yet at this point. And so for me, what I was anticipating was I wanted to see a target for me was Asian liquidity, so the overnight players that were short, right? I want to see those individuals cover. I also had for my key levels, right, when we're talking about the DRC, for my key levels, right, for the day, I had 23,700 15-minute demand, 22,600 H1 imbalance, and then the previous day low, right? And then obviously HOD, I usually pick four on those to three per day. And so we came down right in New York, right in the very start of the Open, which was here, right? This was the New York Open. We came down the first 5 minutes, 8:30 to 8:35, and we just dropped, right, destroying anybody that was buying in this area here, right? So they just went ahead and took them out very quickly, which I love to see these type of setups. These are my, favorite type of setups. And then, as you can see, at the same time, we were coming into the 15-minute demand candle, right? So to target an area, it was looking really good because I love to see a 15-minute, wick turn into a 5-minute dump. And then basically when I went into a smaller time frame where I started to look for this, right, when we bring the price back here, where I started to look for this was on the 1 and the 5 minute, and then we'll go to 8:30 of today. Oh no, that's needs to be of today, my friend. Okay. Okay, so when you look at it today, from where I started to attack it was when I noticed, right, that first 5 minutes, 8:30 to 8:35, when I noticed that they weren't going lower than the 5 minute demand, right? So they were basically coming into this area and buyers were defending the 23,700, 23,690s, right? Now I didn't just take an order and, just right in this area. What I wanted to see was inside that 5 minute dump, after the first sign of strength, right? You want to make sure that like you plot your position, right? So if you think about it, let's say you got in, halfway of this 5 minute candle, right? Well, look where that 1 minute's going to be. So I was waiting for the shift in price delivery, which was, it's kind of, subtle, right? But you can see it if you're really paying attention here to the candle closures. Like that candle actually closes higher, making a little sign of strength. And so the candle that started pushing back down, right, which was 836 to 837, this was the candle that I liked personally to, excuse me, to frame up with my stop loss at the low. So essentially the move looked like this on a 5 minute, right? Would have had look like this. We were targeting to get above here, right? Just to get here. And then the risk was these lows, right? So it fit our game, right? We were looking at like a 15 for 45 for this was a 1 to 5, but the 1 to 45, which was here, right? That was like our 1 to 3 area getting back into the supply candle. So then getting right above that candle definitely solidified like you could, probably shoot for that 1 to 5, getting over these highs above market open. So that's the order that we ended up taking and took some off right there in that area, right? So price came up and basically how I had trailed my risk, I had broken into two pieces and I had trailed risk to here, right? And then we got big 5 minute up candle 915 and 920 that pushed up, right? And then price came back down, knocked me out of one. So I had one contract on, still same risk, which was down here. And then the price, I let the price do what it does because essentially like I want to be buying below New York Open inside demand. So once I was able to take a partial on that first break higher and then they start to pull back, they're basically mitigating off of this level, right? And so like you can get caught up in a chop on the 1 minute, but for me it was easier to see um here on the 15 and 5. Okay. And so once I'm watching, once I'm watching this area and I have, that as my mindset, right? Which I was looking at this 15-minute area once we already respected this one, right? With a dump down. So at this point, my eyes are locked in, right? Pretty much here, right? So there's an institutional candle. I'm just using it because I know the color. But everywhere in this area, pretty much, right? Before obviously we come down, everywhere in this area we were just respecting. So I had, like I said, paid myself here, left the remaining risk here, and then price was going and going and going. And then you get right here, 1050 to 1055. So the first 15 minutes of an hour, the last 15 is usually when price is going to start to move. And so if you can see right here, this is where that shift in price delivery was. All right, so you had a shift in price delivery on 5 minute right there, where basically like if you look at a line graph, signs of strength definitely were, setting in. And then to go for people who shorted, right, most likely before they got the delivery of the high of day, right, that's where I was looking like had my eyes really locked in on, right? I thought there would be some money in this area here. And so then you get 1055 to 11, 11 to 1105, 1105 to 1110, big, massive candle, right? These are the type of candles that, are the RSV candles, right? Because so much effort, right? If you go look at volume, the volume players, but what is it doing? RSB candles are candles that take out traders and rebalance price, right? They're essentially that's essentially what they are, right? You're looking for a high volume 15-minute candle, right, that takes out the trader All right, let me put this on here really quick. That high 15-minute area that takes out the trader and then basically shows me the same rules that get me into the buy position to help me get out of the shorts, right? So at this moment, I believe in the Discord, if I look here, we were talking about this move, right? And so in this move, right, basically we had started to trail the risk, right? Price had moved in our favor. This was what I had to look at the exact time on some of these. 9:02, right? So we were looking at 10:55. So let's see here. Discord. Mm-mm. Okay. And so this would have been 11:08. So let's look at what we were at the time we're looking at. And so for me, as you can see, like on all the assets, we had capitulated on YM. ES was holding strong after taking a low day, and our H1s were still strong. I'm looking to grab um, that HOD, right, and go higher. And so at this moment, like I said, I was telling people to secure like those 763s, like trailing your risk if you had like that remainder trade. And then we had CFD as well. Now, the only thing I'd say I didn't do that I wanted to do today is I didn't short uh into my take profit from my futures buy, if that makes sense. So like when I took profit on this futures position, I wanted to short into that, right? So basically it's the same order essentially because when I'm getting out here, I'm looking for someone to want to be short so I can get out of that buy essentially mindset. And so that's the one thing I'd say I did miss today was in that high effort candle that ended up taking out traders was securing a little bit more, right, on the trade with the remainder that I had. And then with CFD, like I said, not coming in on that backside and selling down. So I think this was a good day. When you think about 15.5 setups, it was very choppy there from like if you think about how long this took, you're thinking 9 a.m. to 10:45. So you're waiting for about an hour and 45 minutes before you get that pop out of the area that really shows you like the shift in price delivery on that price wants to go higher and then wants to reach your target. But overall, really, really good day, I'd say. We went crazy in the chat and pretty much locked off that position, later in the day here. This is 11:08, and Wizardy, kind of comes up and comes in here, and that's when I start to break it down, trail everything up to get out of the position. So pretty good day. And then it makes sense, right, to see on the sell side the same rules, right, that we like to look for 5-minute fast up candle. Because like essentially if a buy is a sell, right? So I like to look for dump candle, sign of strength, second candle entry to the liquidity to liquidity. So essentially what you're looking for here, right, is you've got the obviously the high effort candle in the 5-minute, sign of weakness, right? Price is starting to break down. And then everything above this blue line, which was the old highs, right? Or excuse me, the high on day, you're looking for people to give back, right? Because buy low, sell high, right? That's essentially how this goes. You're also got to think about from a higher time frame perspective, you're above market open at this point. So on a weekly, like a higher time frame, like we're looking at the 4 hour, and we already have that understanding, right? That we are, in a supply area, right? This is essentially for us how we're looking at this because we had buy positions, long positions on CFD. We're essentially looking at this as potentially supply, where people are going to be getting out, and it's more favorable potentially, right? Not a financial advisor, but to be short in those positions if you're going to do less work, right? And so made sense. And then you just wanted to, mark something that it's not marked on this chart for some reason, but it's marked on my other one. But the New York Open was here, and then once they made that low, right, that's what becomes a target in the future, right? So like I always mark that New York Open low. Let's see here, and the excuse me, and the high. So New York Open low. All right, let's do that for right now because that made sense why if you go look at why buyers when we took profit, right? in those positions up here in the high effort candles inside the 80 level algorithmic level, right? Or you trailed risk to like here into the 63s, whatever you did, right? It made sense for where they were going to deliver price, right? They were going to deliver price for the trend line traders. They were going to deliver the New York Open buyers, right? And then they're also going to deliver those early players from like the London Open type time, right? That tried to go ahead and take that position, that wanted it, got scared out of it at New York, and then price rallied on them, right? So we got about 40 seconds before the new open. I'm anticipating um, that we may see some more downside on this 4 hour, 1 hour, right? Down into previous day low areas. We'll see how they open, if they gap or anything here in a few minutes, but looking for 23,500 possibly somewhere inside this 4 hour, demand candle here in this 550s. But from an intraday perspective, like if we continue to break down, that's where my eyes are. My eyes are also here. So we'll see how this plays out. But coming into tonight, like I said, we'd like to see if they're going to get into the 4 hour demand, which also aligns with the 1 hour demand. So we'll move this over to the end of the day for tomorrow. Okay, these LODs can go away. And yeah, so let's go back to a smaller time frame one more time. Oops, do this one here. Okay, so cool. Buyer took profit on the position for today, pretty much. I would say in those new highs. And then what I'm looking for, like I said, is going to see if how they engineered this price over here. Do they come back, overnight and just buyers step in here at the 20,600, 630s here? Or are we going to come a little bit lower tonight? So I don't really have a position, so I don't really have like a true bias, I would say. But just from a technical standpoint, let's look at this one down here. Okay. And we're filling the imbalance here on this 1 hour. So like this is very important to me, filling this area, right? And then just the way that they're just engineering the price here. So, okay, so if they respond very well, then that could mean that the individuals who shorted after the breakout, so essentially like here, or like anywhere below here, like they shorted positions down here, they could be covering their positions. Who knows, but yeah, so I hope that helps with just seeing, the DRC for today. Let me see a couple more things on the actual document. Okay, so obviously this was a bearish type day. 8:30, I would say it was a buy to sell, right? So when I say buy to sell, I'm also thinking from the perspective of, buy to give back, right, to someone at a higher price. That's also, kind of a way. So one thing I improved upon today, I'd say, was just that trailing risk and price went in my favor, right? As the market was making money available, I was, definitely acting on my edge. Couple things I learned today is just trust your signals, right? Trust your 15 and 5 minute, signals. Um, a 5 minute dump is the same thing as a 5 minute fast up, right? So kind of like explaining the high effort candle for the buyers getting out of the shorts or getting out of the long positions and how that frames up the same exact way on the buy side, essentially. And then the other thing was if I am short, right, I want to play that position. Like say I'm short here. Sometimes I know a lot of people get caught like right in here, 23,700, et cetera. But when you have a low on day, you want to be giving that position back below the low of day, right? And watching responses on higher time frames for imbalances, so like expansions or demand plays. So that's going to be it for the DRC. Let me go back to the document one last time. Last time here. Changes I need to make from today. Let's see here. I would say the thing I needed to change was just the fact that once I knew that we delivered that liquidity, based on where we were on a 4 hour time frame, I actually wanted to see buyers give back orders. So that's kind of how I'll leave it with. Last thing, dollar index, seeing that price really still holding in demands on that weekly, holding up after rallying up, coming back here to 98, showing two solid days, Friday and now Monday, closing pretty strong. I feel like this 4 hour wick is definitely starting to turn into a potential target. So, and then from an ICP players, we'll look, and see how this goes. I mean, it's just that weekly daily is just in an accumulation area. So, wanting to see if they're going to build some solid, price action going forward, um, on this side of the purple line. So we'll see. But appreciate you guys watching, and we'll be back again the same time tomorrow. Have a good day.